The music hall was alive with chatter and soft laughter as the audience settled into their seats. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over polished wooden floors and velvet drapes. It was one of those evenings where elegance and expectation filled the air, and everyone was ready to witness the talent of the famous pianist, a man whose skill on the keys was only matched by his sharp tongue. People had come from far and wide, hoping to witness his mastery firsthand, unaware that his critical nature often left guests feeling small and unworthy. Among the crowd was a woman who looked out of place at first glance. Her dress was simple, far from the designer gowns that many wore, and she carried a worn leather notebook under her arm. She was not there for fame or recognition. She was there because music had always been her refuge. She had grown up in a small town, far from concert halls and elite music schools, learning melodies from whatever instrument she could find, sometimes a broken piano in a community hall, sometimes a small keyboard that had seen better days. Music had always been her companion, offering comfort when life seemed too heavy, a friend when loneliness crept in. She had heard of the pianist's reputation long before stepping into this hall. People spoke of his brilliance with awe, but also with caution. They warned newcomers about his tendency to belittle anyone who dared step outside their expected role in life. Yet, despite the warnings, she felt drawn to witness him play, not out of a desire to prove herself, but because she loved the sound of music, the way it could speak without words. As the lights dimmed and the pianist appeared on stage, a hush fell over the audience. He was tall and confident, with a commanding presence that seemed to fill the room. His hands moved effortlessly over the keys, and his playing was flawless. Every note was precise, every pause deliberate. The audience admired his skill, and some even held their breath, afraid that a single mistake might break the spell. But, along with the awe, there was a sense of intimidation, a subtle reminder that not everyone could reach this level. During a brief intermission, the pianist scanned the crowd, his sharp eyes landing on the woman with the simple dress and the worn notebook. A smirk appeared on his face. He walked down the stage steps and approached her, drawing the attention of the people nearby. His voice was smooth, but carried a teasing edge. "Do you really think you belong here?" he asked, glancing at her notebook, as if it were a sign of foolish ambition. The audience nearby chuckled softly, expecting the woman to shrink back, to mumble an apology and retreat into the shadows. The woman, however, did not flinch. She held her head high and met his gaze. Her voice was steady, calm, and polite. "I may not belong here yet, but I can still make music." There was no anger in her tone, only quiet confidence. The crowd murmured, caught off guard by her composure. She did not argue, did not challenge him in a confrontational way. She simply stated a truth that she had carried in her heart for years. Music was her world, her language, her way of expressing what words could not, and she would not allow anyone's opinion to diminish that. The pianist's eyes narrowed slightly, intrigued more than annoyed. He had spent so much time judging others, measuring them against his standards, that he was not used to someone standing firm in such a subtle yet powerful way. The woman's calm demeanor was unexpected, and it made the audience pause, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. He laughed softly, a sound that was more curious than mocking, and returned to the stage, leaving a ripple of whispers behind him. The woman returned to her seat, taking out her notebook and flipping through its pages. Each page held melodies and small compositions, some simple, some more complex, all of them written with care and love. She had spent countless hours alone with her music, experimenting with notes and rhythms, pouring her emotions into sounds that only she could hear fully. To her, music was not about applause or approval. It was about expression, connection, and the ability to convey feelings that words often failed to capture. As the pianist resumed playing, she listened intently, letting the sound wash over her. She could appreciate the precision and technical mastery, but she also thought about the heart behind each note. Music, to her, was alive when it carried emotion, when it resonated with the listener beyond the perfection of technique. She felt a quiet determination, a sense that she might have the chance to show that music could come from unexpected places, that passion and feeling could speak as loudly as skill and training. The audience continued to watch the pianist with rapt attention, unaware that a small story was unfolding quietly in the corner. The woman's presence was like a soft counterpoint to the grandeur of the hall, a reminder that music was not confined to wealth or prestige. She felt a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. Here she was, in a place where she had never imagined she would be, yet she did not feel fear. Instead, she felt readiness, as if life had given her a chance to step forward and let her love for music be seen. When the pianist finished his performance and the applause echoed through the hall, he looked once again at the woman. This time, there was no mockery, only curiosity and a challenge in his eyes. He approached her after the crowd had quieted and spoke with a tone that was half teasing, half serious. "If you can play even one piece with feeling," he said, "I'll personally teach you. But if not, perhaps you should leave quietly." The audience held their breath. Many expected the woman to turn away, to bow out gracefully. Instead, she smiled, a simple, genuine smile, and nodded. "I will try," she said. Her acceptance surprised everyone. There was no arrogance, no pretense. She was simply willing to step forward to share a piece of herself through music. People nearby exchanged glances, some impressed, some skeptical, but all of them intrigued. She walked toward the grand piano on stage, her steps calm but purposeful, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for a moment she did not yet fully understand. The pianist gestured toward the keys, almost as if to say, "Let's see what you have." She sat down, took a deep breath, and let her fingers hover over the keys. In that moment, time seemed to slow. The hall was silent, all eyes on her, and yet she felt a strange sense of peace. Music had always been her companion, and now it would speak for her. With the first note, the air seemed to shift. The sound was gentle but deliberate, carrying a sincerity that could not be ignored. The audience leaned forward, sensing the emotion behind the simplicity. She played not for applause, not for validation, but because she had to. Each note told a story of quiet resilience, of a life lived with honesty, and a love for something greater than herself. The pianist, who had expected a timid or clumsy performance, found himself leaning in, unable to look away. There was something in the way she played that transcended technique, a raw authenticity that could not be taught. His smirk faded, replaced by a growing realization that this was not about skill alone. This was about heart. By the end of her short piece, the hall was enveloped in a hush. The audience had not yet erupted into applause, caught as they were in the unexpected depth of what they had just witnessed. She lifted her hands from the keys and turned to face the pianist. Her eyes met his, calm and steady, carrying no defiance, only truth. The moment hung in the air, a delicate balance of tension and admiration. The pianist, for the first time in a long while, felt speechless, his usual confidence shaken by the quiet power of a simple woman who had dared to step into his world with nothing but music and courage. This first encounter set the stage for what would become a remarkable story. The woman, who had once thought herself insignificant in the world of grand concert halls, had shown that courage, humility, and passion could speak louder than judgment or ridicule. And the pianist, whose life had been filled with accolades and authority, discovered that even the most unassuming person could leave an indelible mark on those who were willing to listen. In that moment, the audience realized that true music did not reside in fame or perfection, but in the heart that played it, a lesson they would carry long after the final note faded. After the brief but powerful interlude, the hall returned to its usual quiet anticipation. The famous pianist had taken his place once again at the grand piano, his fingers moving across the keys with the same precision and authority as before. Yet despite his confidence, a faint flicker of curiosity lingered in his eyes. He could not forget the woman's calm reply and her willingness to face him without fear. It was unusual, unexpected, and intriguing. He had long been accustomed to people cowering or retreating when faced with his sharp criticism. Yet here was someone who carried herself with quiet dignity, seemingly unafraid of his reputation or the eyes of the audience. Meanwhile, the woman returned to her seat, the notebook she held still clutched in her hand. She could feel the eyes of the audience on her, sensing their curiosity and, in some cases, their doubt. She did not mind. Her heart was steady, her mind focused on the music that had always been her true companion. She had spent countless hours playing in solitude, exploring the melodies that flowed through her mind, learning to express herself without anyone's guidance. The piano had been her friend, her confidant, and now she felt an unusual sense of purpose, as if she had been preparing her whole life for this very moment. When the pianist finished his next piece, the applause filled the hall, echoing off the walls in waves of admiration. People clapped for his mastery, for the technical perfection of each note, but the woman felt a subtle emptiness in it all. She could see the beauty and skill, yes, but she also knew that music was more than just technical brilliance. It was about emotion, about conveying what could not be spoken with words, and that was what she intended to show next. The pianist, sensing the moment, turned his attention toward her. He had issued a challenge earlier, one that many thought she would decline. Yet she had accepted, and now, in front of everyone, she prepared to take the stage. There was a quiet tension in the room as whispers spread through the audience. Some were skeptical, some amused, and a few felt a spark of intrigue. Everyone wanted to see how this woman, so simple in appearance and demeanor, would rise to the occasion. She stood slowly, walking toward the grand piano. Each step was deliberate, each movement calm, as if she were walking not just onto a stage, but into a moment that had been waiting for her all her life. She sat down, her hands hovering above the keys for a brief moment, feeling the cool smoothness under her fingers. She closed her eyes for a second, letting herself breathe and letting her thoughts settle. This was not a performance to impress anyone. This was a moment to share what had lived inside her heart for so long. Her fingers touched the keys, softly at first, testing the resonance, feeling the vibrations that connected her to the piano. The audience leaned in slightly, captivated by the delicate anticipation in the room. Then she began to play. The notes were simple, not flashy or grand, but they carried a depth that surprised everyone. There was a story in every sound, a quiet resilience, a gentle strength that seemed to speak directly to each listener's heart. The music was not about complexity, but about sincerity, about conveying what she had lived and felt. The pianist, who had expected hesitation or uncertainty, found himself leaning forward in his seat. He could not look away, as if drawn by the unexpected power of her playing. There was an authenticity in her music, a truth that no training could replicate, no reputation could overshadow. It was clear that she had spent years cultivating not just technique, but emotion, and now she was offering it freely to the world. Her hands moved across the keys with grace, each note carefully considered, each pause meaningful. She was not performing for applause. She was performing for connection, for the chance to let the music speak in its own language. The audience sat in stunned silence. Many were unprepared for the intensity of the moment, for the way a simple melody could convey so much feeling. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, experiencing emotions they had not expected to encounter in such a formal setting. Even the critics, who prided themselves on being discerning and detached, felt a tug at their hearts. They could not ignore the power of authenticity, the way it could pierce through any preconceived notions of skill or status. She continued to play, allowing the melody to build subtly, layering emotion upon emotion. There was no rush, no attempt to impress with speed or technical brilliance. Each note was a deliberate choice, a reflection of her inner world. She thought of her childhood, of the quiet moments spent learning melodies alone, of the small triumphs when a tune finally sounded right. She thought of the struggles and the moments of doubt, and how music had been the one constant that never judged her, never asked her to change. And now, all of that poured into the sound, transforming it into something palpable, something that could be felt in the hearts of everyone listening. The pianist's expression shifted gradually, from curiosity to awe, to something more unguarded. He had never experienced a performance quite like this, one where technical perfection was secondary to the soul behind the music. His smirk disappeared, replaced by a quiet tension, as he realized that he had underestimated this woman entirely. He had expected timidity, perhaps an awkward note or two, but what he heard was a music that could not be ignored, a presence that demanded respect. As the final notes lingered in the air, the woman let her hands rest gently on the keys, her breathing calm, her gaze steady. The hall remained silent for a moment, as if everyone was collectively holding their breath, unsure whether to break the spell. Then, slowly, the applause began. It was hesitant at first, then stronger, building into a wave of appreciation that filled the room. People rose to their feet, clapping not just for the music, but for the courage it represented. The woman had stepped into a world that often valued appearance, wealth, and reputation above all else, and she had spoken with the language of the heart, unflinching and true. The pianist, now standing beside her, could not hide his amazement. He extended his hand, not in mockery, but in genuine acknowledgement. The audience watched, sensing the shift in dynamics. Here was a man who had long been untouchable, now humbled by the sincerity and courage of someone who had been overlooked and underestimated. The moment was not just about music. It was about recognition of the human spirit, about seeing beyond appearances and understanding that talent and heart could come from anywhere. Back in her seat, the woman smiled softly, a quiet, knowing smile that carried neither arrogance nor satisfaction. She had not played to win favor, nor had she sought validation. She had played because it was her truth, because music was her voice when words were not enough. And in doing so, she had changed the atmosphere of the hall, reminding everyone present that true artistry was not always found in fame or polish, but in honesty, dedication, and courage. As the evening continued, whispers circulated among them all. Audience, speaking of the remarkable performance they had witnessed. Some marveled at the unexpected talent, others at the bravery it took to step forward. In private, the pianist reflected on the encounter, realizing that his challenge had revealed more than he had anticipated. He had come to measure skill, but he had discovered heart, authenticity, and the quiet power of someone who dared to play without fear. This moment marked a turning point. The woman had not only faced a challenge, but had exceeded expectations in a way that could not be measured by technique alone. She had reminded everyone that music was alive, that it belonged to those who played with sincerity, and that courage often arrived in the simplest, most unassuming forms. The hall, filled with a mixture of admiration, surprise, and respect, had witnessed something rare and unforgettable, a story that would linger in memory far longer than the applause itself. The next morning, the woman woke early, the memory of the previous evening still fresh in her mind. She felt a mixture of excitement and calm satisfaction. She had stepped into a world far removed from her small town, had faced ridicule, and had responded not with anger or defense, but with her music. The memory of the pianist's surprised expression lingered, a reminder that courage and sincerity could sometimes achieve what skill alone could not. She sat by the window for a while, looking out at the quiet streets, her notebook open on her lap. She reflected on every note she had played, every pause, every moment of connection with the audience, and felt a quiet pride in what she had accomplished. The hall where the pianist performed remained a topic of discussion among the city's elite. Word of the unexpected performance had spread quickly, reaching newspapers, social gatherings, and even other musicians. People could not stop talking about the simple woman who had dared to play in the presence of a master and had left everyone speechless. Invitations arrived almost immediately, offering her opportunities to perform at smaller venues and local music events. She accepted cautiously, understanding that this was just the beginning and that each new step would require the same humility and dedication she had always known. The pianist, too, found himself unable to forget the performance. He replayed it in his mind countless times, thinking about the emotion, the precision, and the heart behind every note. He had always prided himself on his ability to detect talent, to discern who deserved recognition and who did not. Yet this woman had defied his expectations. There was no question of technical mastery at the highest level, but there was a presence, a depth, a sincerity that could not be ignored. He realized that he had misjudged her based on appearances and assumptions, and that realization weighed on him more than he had anticipated. Days later, the woman received an unexpected invitation from the pianist himself. It was polite and formal, yet the message carried a sense of curiosity and acknowledgement. He asked her to meet him privately, to discuss her music, and perhaps explore a path forward. She hesitated for a moment, understanding that this could be another moment of judgment or challenge. But she also sensed an opportunity, a chance to learn from someone she had always respected from afar. She agreed, arranging to meet him in his private studio, a place she had never imagined entering. The studio was spacious and filled with instruments, each carefully maintained. The air smelled faintly of polish and old wood. The pianist welcomed her with a nod, a small smile replacing the confident, teasing demeanor he often displayed in public. There was no audience here, no expectation of performance, only a quiet space where music could exist freely. He gestured toward a piano in the corner and asked her to play something she felt strongly about. She hesitated only briefly before, placing her hands on the keys, letting her emotions guide her as she had always done. The music flowed naturally, heartfelt and unrestrained. The pianist listened closely, noting the nuances, the pauses, the way she allowed silence to carry meaning as much as sound. He asked questions, not in criticism, but in genuine curiosity. Why did you choose that note there? What made you pause at that moment? She explained simply, sharing her thoughts and emotions behind each choice. She spoke of her childhood, of the solitude in which she had learned to express herself, of the moments of doubt and joy that had shaped her understanding of music. Each word was sincere, and he found himself learning from her perspective as much as she was learning from him. The hours passed unnoticed. She felt no pressure, no need to perform for validation. She played because it was natural, because it was who she was. The pianist, observing, realized that her music was not about perfection, but about honesty, about connection. He began to offer guidance, subtle suggestions on technique and rhythm, but always respecting her personal style and expression. He encouraged her to explore, to experiment, to take risks while remaining true to herself. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of fulfillment in teaching, not just for the purpose of molding talent, but for helping someone uncover the depths of their own voice. Over the following weeks, she returned regularly to the studio. Each session deepened her understanding of music, but also her confidence. She began experimenting with more complex compositions, blending the technical skills she was learning with the emotional depth she had always carried. Her fingers became more agile, her sense of timing sharper, yet the authenticity of her performance never wavered. The pianist, once known for his sharp judgments, found himself quietly proud of her progress, witnessing the transformation of someone who had once seemed ordinary into a musician capable of moving hearts. Outside the studio, her life slowly began to change. People recognized her when she walked through the city, some curious, some admiring, though she remained humble and grounded. Invitations to perform grew more frequent, and she started giving small recitals, each one a chance to share her music and touch the lives of her audience. She approached every performance with the same focus and sincerity she had always known, never allowing the growing attention to cloud her dedication to music itself. The relationship with the pianist evolved as well. He became a mentor, yes, but also a guide and a companion in the exploration of music's deeper meanings. He shared stories of his own struggles, of the pressure to maintain perfection, and the loneliness that often came with fame. She listened with empathy, offering insights drawn from her own experiences of isolation and perseverance. Together, they discovered that teaching and learning were not one-sided. Each could inspire the other, and each could find lessons in the need. Unexpected twists of life. One afternoon, after a particularly intense practice session, the pianist paused and looked at her thoughtfully. "You have something rare," he said softly. "It is not just skill, but a connection that people feel when you play. Do not let anyone, including yourself, forget that." She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. It was not enough to master the notes. Music needed to live in the soul, to resonate with others. She had learned that lesson long before she met him, but now she had confirmation from someone who had once doubted her, someone who had seen the truth of her talent and heart. Word of her progress began to spread quietly. Friends and acquaintances who had attended the first hall performance marveled at how her music had grown, how her presence on stage carried confidence and grace. Critics who once dismissed her began to take note, curious to see how a simple woman from a small town could command attention and stir emotion so profoundly. Yet despite the recognition, she remained grounded. Her focus was not on fame, applause, or validation, but on the ongoing journey of expressing herself through music. The pianist, too, changed. He became more reflective, less inclined to ridicule, and more open to discovering talent in unexpected places. He saw the world differently, realizing that brilliance could come wrapped in humility, that the loudest presence did not always indicate the deepest understanding. The woman had taught him, in her quiet and unassuming way, that human connection and sincerity could transcend skill and reputation, leaving a lasting impression that no technical mastery alone could create. As time passed, the bond between mentor and student deepened, built on mutual respect and shared love for music. They experimented with compositions together, blending her emotional insight with his technical guidance. Each session was a discovery, a collaboration that enriched both their lives. She learned to navigate complex pieces with confidence, and he learned to appreciate the power of simplicity, the beauty of allowing emotion to lead where precision alone could not. Through this period of growth and exploration, the woman realized that her journey was no longer just about proving herself to others. It was about understanding her own voice, embracing her own story, and allowing it to shine through every note she played. The piano had always been her companion, but now it had become her instrument for connection, for sharing the depth of her experiences with a world that often overlooked the unassuming. The music hall, the audience, the pianist's initial ridicule, all of it, had been part of a path that led her to a deeper understanding of herself and the power of her art. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had grown not only as a musician, but as a person. She carried herself with quiet confidence, aware of her worth, but never boastful. She understood that true artistry was not about showing off skill, but about touching the hearts of others, about offering something genuine and unguarded. And in the pianist, she had found not just a teacher, but a partner in exploration, someone who had learned from her as much as she had learned from him. Together, they had begun a journey that would continue to evolve, proving that courage, sincerity, and the willingness to embrace one's own truth could create moments that leave the world in awe. The next recital was unlike any she had ever experienced. Invitations had been sent out to a broader audience, including musicians, critics, and music enthusiasts from across the city. The hall was grand, with high ceilings and ornate decorations, and it buzzed with anticipation. She arrived early, carrying only her notebook and a small bag, her presence unassuming yet calm. She was no stranger to performing, but the weight of expectation still made her heart beat faster. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that music had always been about honesty, about letting her emotions guide her hands, rather than succumbing to pressure. As she stepped onto the stage, she noticed the famous pianist seated in the front row. He smiled subtly, a quiet acknowledgement that had become familiar over the weeks of mentorship. There was no judgment in his gaze now, only anticipation. The audience's chatter quieted, sensing the importance of the moment. She moved to the grand piano, her fingers brushing over the keys as if greeting an old friend. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the memories of past struggles, hopes, and dreams settle into her mind. Every note she would play tonight carried not just skill, but her story, her journey. Her heart. The performance began softly, a melody that seemed simple, but was layered with emotion. Each note was deliberate, measured, yet full of life. She allowed herself to feel each chord, each pause, as the music flowed naturally. The audience listened in silence, many leaning forward as if drawn by an invisible thread connecting her heart to theirs. The pianist, observing closely, saw how her authenticity transformed the music into something beyond mere performance. It was alive, breathing, and touching everyone present in ways that technical mastery alone could not achieve. As the music built, she experimented with dynamics and tempo, blending moments of gentle vulnerability with bursts of strength and passion. She drew upon her memories, her joys and sorrows, allowing them to guide her hands. Every phrase told a story, every pause held meaning, and the audience could sense the depth behind each note. Some eyes glistened with emotion, moved by the raw sincerity that flowed freely from the piano. Critics who had come expecting a novice to stumble found themselves captivated, unable to look away, feeling the honesty and courage that infused every melody. Halfway through the recital, she paused briefly, lifting her hands from the keys. The room remained silent, the audience holding their breath in anticipation of what would come next. She opened her notebook, turning to a page filled with a composition she had written in solitude. The piece was personal, inspired by her life's experiences, the quiet moments of struggle, and the triumphs she had never spoken of. With a calm determination, she began to play. The music was delicate at first, a soft whisper that gradually grew into a powerful declaration of emotion. Each note seemed to resonate with the hearts of the listeners, carrying the weight of lived experiences and the joy of discovery. The pianist, now completely absorbed, leaned forward, his eyes reflecting the depth of feeling conveyed by her playing. He had witnessed countless performances, but few had moved him as profoundly. It was not just the technical skill or the complexity of the composition, but the honesty, the courage, and the undeniable connection she had with the music. He realized that she had transcended the need for approval or recognition. She was playing for the music itself, and in doing so, she had reached a level of artistry that few ever achieved. The audience's reaction grew stronger as the performance continued. Applause broke out at unexpected moments, not as interruptions, but as spontaneous expressions of emotion. People whispered to each other, sharing their amazement at the depth of feeling conveyed by someone so seemingly ordinary. Her fingers danced across the keys with grace and precision, yet always with a sense of freedom and authenticity. Every note, every chord, every pause was a reflection of her journey, her heart, and her understanding of what music truly represented. As the final notes lingered in the air, a profound silence settled over the hall. The audience, caught in the spell of the performance, hesitated before breaking into applause. When it came, it was thunderous, filling the room with a wave of admiration and respect. She rose from the piano, a soft smile on her face, acknowledging the audience with humility. The applause continued, some people standing, some wiping tears from their eyes, all moved by the honesty and power of her music. The pianist rose as well, moving to her side. He extended his hand, not in judgment, not in challenge, but in genuine respect. She shook it, feeling a sense of validation that went beyond words. In that moment, the stage was no longer a place of challenge or ridicule, but a space where connection, courage, and authenticity were celebrated. The woman had proven, not through confrontation or competition, but through the simple act of expressing her heart, that music could transcend expectations, assumptions, and appearances. Backstage, she reflected on the performance. She had faced her fears, embraced her journey, and shared her story through music. She realized that the applause and admiration, while meaningful, were secondary to the fulfillment she felt in playing honestly and wholeheartedly. She had transformed the stage into a space where vulnerability became strength, and where authenticity resonated more powerfully than technical perfection. The days that followed brought new opportunities. Invitations to perform at larger venues arrived, and she began to gain recognition for her unique ability to connect with audiences. Yet she remained humble, understanding that her success was not just about talent, but about perseverance, courage, and the willingness to stay true to herself. She continued to meet with the pianist, learning new techniques, exploring compositions, and refining her craft. Each session deepened her understanding of music and strengthened her confidence, while the pianist found joy in witnessing her growth and in learning from her perspective on emotion and connection. Their collaboration became a source of inspiration, not only for themselves, but for others who witnessed it. They worked on joint performances, blending her emotional depth with his technical mastery, creating music that was both precise and profoundly moving. The woman's journey, which had begun in quiet solitude, now inspired audiences, critics, and fellow musicians alike. She had become a symbol of courage, humility, and the power of authentic expression. Through it all, she remained grounded. She understood that the journey was ongoing, that each performance, each composition, and each new opportunity was a chance to grow and to share her heart. The pianist, once known for his harsh critiques and critical eye, had become her supporter and guide, a testament to the transformative power of honesty and courage. Together, they demonstrated that true artistry was not measured solely by skill or reputation, but by the ability to touch lives, to convey truth, and to inspire others through the simple, profound act of creating music from the heart. By the end of this chapter, she had solidified her place as a performer who moved beyond expectations. She had turned ridicule into respect, doubt into admiration, and simplicity into an unforgettable presence. Her story was no longer just her own. It had become a lesson for everyone who witnessed her rise, a reminder that courage, authenticity, and emotional truth could speak louder than any criticism, leaving audiences not just impressed, but profoundly moved. After months of practice and performances, the woman had grown into her role as a musician who could captivate audiences with both heart and skill. Her confidence had blossomed, not from fame or applause, but from the quiet knowledge that she had embraced her own journey fully. Each performance was an opportunity to share her emotions and experiences, to let her music speak in a way that transcended words. People began to recognize her, not just for her talent, but for the authenticity and depth that she brought to every stage. The pianist continued to mentor her, though their relationship had evolved beyond simple teacher and student. They collaborated on compositions, blending his technical expertise with her emotional insight. The sessions were filled with experimentation, laughter, and shared discovery. He had learned to see the beauty in simplicity and emotion, while she had refined her technique and deepened her understanding of musical structure. Together, they had formed a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and a shared love for music. One afternoon, after a particularly intense practice, the pianist spoke quietly, his voice tinged with admiration. "You have transformed so much," he said. "I underestimated you at first, and now I see not only your talent, but your ability to touch people's hearts. That is rare." She smiled, feeling the warmth of genuine recognition, but she did not let it cloud her humility. She had learned that music was not about impressing others, but about communicating truthfully. Yet, hearing his words, she felt the satisfaction of being seen, truly seen. For the first time in a long while, as her reputation grew, she began receiving invitations to perform at larger events and music festivals. Her story, the woman who had faced ridicule and responded with grace and talent, became known. People were inspired by her courage and dedication, and her performances often carried an added layer of meaning because audiences understood the struggle behind her journey. She never let the attention change who she was. She remained grounded, always reminding herself that music was a reflection of her inner world, not a means to elevate her status. The pianist, once feared for his critical nature, had changed as well. Witnessing her growth had taught him the importance of empathy, encouragement, and openness. He had seen firsthand that talent could flourish in unexpected ways, and that sometimes those who appeared ordinary held extraordinary potential. He had become more thoughtful in his interactions with others, more willing to recognize and nurture talent without judgment. Together, they were creating a ripple effect, showing that music could be a force for inspiration and connection rather than division. During one notable performance, the hall was filled with people who had come specifically to hear her story and her music. As she played, the audience could sense the layers of her experience woven into each note. Her fingers moved with precision and fluidity, but every sound carried emotion, telling a story that resonated deeply. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was not the recognition she sought. It was the confirmation that her music had reached the hearts of those who listened, and that connection was her true reward. Backstage, she reflected on her journey. She thought about the first time she had stepped into the grand hall, nervous and unsure, facing a pianist who had mocked her in front of a room full of people. The memory no longer caused pain or fear. Instead, it reminded her of how far she had come. That challenge had been a catalyst, forcing her to stand firm in her love for music and in her belief in herself. It had taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The pianist joined her backstage, carrying his own reflections from the performance. He spoke of his admiration for her resilience and growth, noting how she had taken every lesson, every critique, and transformed it into something powerful and unique. They discussed new compositions, experimenting with harmonies and melodies that merged their styles. Each session was a creative journey, a dialogue between experience and emotion, technical skill and heartfelt expression. The woman found that she learned as much from their collaborations as she did from her own solitary practice. As she continued to perform, she became a source of inspiration for other aspiring musicians, especially those who came from modest backgrounds or had faced doubts and discouragement. She often spoke about her journey, emphasizing the importance of perseverance, humility, and authenticity. She encouraged others to embrace their own stories, to let their emotions guide their music, and to understand that true artistry was not measured solely by accolades, but by the ability to connect with others and communicate truthfully through sound. Her relationship with the pianist remained central to her growth. They often discussed the philosophy of music, the importance of emotion, and the role of the artist in society. He had once believed that mastery of technique was everything, but now he understood that music was also about the human connection it fostered, the emotions it could evoke, and the stories it could tell. Through her, he had rediscovered the joy of teaching, the excitement of collaboration, and the beauty of witnessing genuine talent flourish. Outside of the music world, her life grew richer in subtle ways. She found a sense of balance, engaging with friends and family while pursuing her passion. She valued the quiet moments of reflection and creativity, recognizing that her artistry was nurtured not only on stage, but in everyday life. She continued to explore her musical ideas in her notebook, experimenting with new compositions and refining her understanding of rhythm, melody, and harmony. Each note she wrote was infused with personal experience and heartfelt emotion, creating a body of work that was both authentic and moving. Her performances began to attract media attention, with stories highlighting her journey from a humble background to a musician who captivated audiences with both skill and heart. Yet she remained focused on the essence of her craft, refusing to let fame or recognition alter her approach. She understood that her true reward was in the moments when her music touched someone deeply, when listeners could feel her emotions through the sound she produced. Those connections, fleeting yet profound, were what gave her purpose and fulfillment. The pianist, now a close ally and friend, often expressed pride in her accomplishments. He had seen her transformation from a timid, uncertain woman into a confident, expressive artist. His mentorship had been meaningful, but he recognized that her growth came from within, from her courage, dedication, and unwavering commitment to authenticity. Together, they had created something unique, a partnership that celebrated both technical mastery and heartfelt expression, demonstrating the power of collaboration and mutual respect. As time went on, she began to consider teaching as well, inspired by her own journey and the mentorship she had received. She wanted to help others discover their voices, to encourage authenticity and courage in music, and to show that talent could emerge from anywhere if nurtured with care and belief. Her experiences had taught her that the journey was as important as the destination, that challenges could become opportunities, and that music was a language that could bridge gaps, heal wounds, and inspire hearts. Through her continued growth and performances, she had become more than just a musician. She had become a symbol of resilience, authenticity, and courage. Her story demonstrated that obstacles could be transformed into strength, that sincerity and passion could command attention and admiration, and that true artistry was measured by the ability to touch lives and convey truth through sound. And while the applause and recognition were gratifying, they were secondary to the satisfaction she felt in living her truth, sharing her story, and inspiring others through her music. Years had passed since that first moment when she stepped into the grand music hall, nervous yet determined, facing ridicule and doubt from a famous pianist. Time had shaped her in ways she could hardly have imagined. She had grown from a simple, humble woman who who loved music into an artist who inspired audiences and musicians alike. Her journey had been filled with challenges, triumphs, quiet reflections, and moments of profound joy. Yet through it all, she had remained true to herself, understanding that authenticity and heart were the foundations of her artistry. Her performances had become widely sought after, yet she approached each one with the same humility and focus she had always held. She never allowed the growing recognition or applause to distract her from the essence of music, expressing emotion, telling a story, and connecting with others on a deep human level. Each time she sat at the piano, she carried with her the memory of that first challenge, the lesson that courage and sincerity could transform even the harshest judgment into opportunity. That memory had become a guiding light, reminding her that every note mattered not because of perfection, but because of truth. The pianist, who had once mocked her, had become not only her mentor, but also her friend and ally. Over the years, he had watched her evolve, and in doing so, he had learned to see the world differently. He no longer valued only skill and fame. He had learned to recognize the power of authenticity, resilience, and emotion. Together, they had collaborated on performances, compositions, and teaching, creating a dynamic partnership that left audiences inspired and critics reflective. Their story had become one of transformation, proving that respect and understanding could emerge from the most unexpected encounters. The woman's influence reached beyond the stage. She began teaching young students, sharing not only technical skills, but also the philosophy of music that had guided her life. She emphasized the importance of courage, the value of vulnerability, and the power of emotion. She encouraged her students to embrace their own stories, to play from the heart, and to understand that music was a language that could convey truth, even when words could not. Her guidance transformed many young musicians, instilling in them a love for music that went beyond competition and recognition. One particularly memorable day, she was invited to perform at a prestigious international music festival. The hall was enormous, filled with people from around the world. Despite the grandeur, she felt no fear, only focus and purpose. She knew that her music had a story to tell, one that transcended language, culture, and expectation. As she played, every note carried the depth of her experience, the struggles of her past, the lessons learned through mentorship, the quiet joys and challenges of growth. The audience was captivated, many moved to tears, others silent in awe. Her performance was not just about technical brilliance. It was about the honesty and humanity she poured into the music. After the performance, a group of young musicians approached her, their eyes wide with admiration. They had heard about her journey, about how she had once been ridiculed and had risen above it through courage and dedication. They asked for advice, for guidance, and for inspiration. She smiled gently, understanding the responsibility she now held. She spoke of perseverance, of listening to one's heart, of valuing authenticity above recognition. She encouraged them to embrace their own voices, to take risks, and to play with honesty. She shared the story of her first challenge with the famous pianist, explaining how fear had been transformed into opportunity through calm determination and belief in herself. Meanwhile, the pianist watched from the back of the hall, feeling a mix of pride and reflection. He had been the one to challenge her years ago, and yet, through her journey, he had grown as well. He saw the impact of his mentorship, yes, but also the extraordinary strength and dedication that had come from within her. She had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of everyone she touched, from students to audiences to fellow musicians. In that moment, he understood fully that true influence came not from authority or skill alone, but from inspiring others to find their own strength and voice. Over the years, the woman's career continued to flourish, yet she remained grounded and humble. She understood that music was a gift, a language of the soul, and she treated it with reverence. She composed new pieces, blending her emotional insight with the techniques she had mastered, creating works that were celebrated for their depth and honesty. Critics admired her growth, but her satisfaction came from the human connection her music fostered. From the moments when listeners felt seen and moved by her story, the woman also used her influence to support underprivileged communities, organizing workshops and concerts to make music accessible to those who might never have had the opportunity to experience it. She believed that talent could emerge from anywhere, and that passion and dedication could flourish with the right encouragement. Her work inspired countless individuals, showing that courage, humility, and persistence could break barriers and create opportunities for anyone willing to embrace their journey. One evening, during a quiet rehearsal in her home, she reflected on her life's path. She thought of the first time she had faced the famous pianist's ridicule, of the fear and uncertainty she had felt, and of the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. That moment, which had once seemed daunting, had become the turning point that set her on a path of growth, discovery, and fulfillment. Every challenge that followed had been shaped by that initial experience. Every triumph and lesson, a continuation of the journey she had begun in the quiet of her own heart. The pianist joined her during the rehearsal, and they played a duet together, blending their styles into a seamless harmony. As they played, she realized how far they had both come. He had learned to appreciate simplicity, emotion, and the power of encouragement, while she had honed her skills, embraced her story, and discovered the true essence of artistry. Their collaboration was a testament to the transformative power of mentorship, respect, and shared passion. In the years that followed, the woman's story continued to inspire. She performed in concert halls around the world, taught students of all ages, and composed music that resonated deeply with listeners. Yet she never lost sight of the lessons that had shaped her: courage in the face of doubt, authenticity in the face of expectation, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Her life had become an example of how perseverance, humility, and passion could transform challenges into opportunities and leave a lasting impact on the world. In her quiet moments, she often thought of the audience that had first doubted her, of the famous pianist who had challenged her, and of the journey that had followed. She understood that life's obstacles were not meant to defeat, but to guide, that ridicule could become a catalyst for growth, and that sincerity and courage could speak more powerfully than words or acclaim. Her music, her teaching, and her story were intertwined, each reflecting the depth of her experiences and the authenticity of her journey. By the end of her life, she had achieved more than she had ever dreamed, not only as a musician, but as an inspiration to others. Her performances, teachings, and compositions had touched countless lives, proving that true artistry was not measured by fame or perfection, but by the ability to convey truth, connect with others, and inspire courage. She had turned ridicule into respect, doubt into admiration, and simplicity into something extraordinary. Her legacy lived on, a testament to the enduring power of heart, courage, and authenticity, leaving audiences and students alike forever moved and inspired by the story of a woman who dared to play, dared to believe, and dared to be herself.